Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today we are talking about the condition in which authoritarian states emerged, social divisions. Now, just a reminder, conditions in this sense is referring to what is happening around the country that made an environment for the Nazi Party to grow. Now, we're talking about social divisions. What are social divisions? Well, social is, very simply put, how groups of people or political parties interact with each other, how we deal with each other. Right? A social division is how groups of people or political parties interact with each other negatively to create a separation between groups or several groups of people, to separate people in society based off of ethnicity, race, or political parties. So today, when we're talking about social divisions, we're talking about how the country or Germany was divided leading up to the Nazi Party to manipulate the situation. Today we are talking about four specific examples here. We're talking about the KPD, the Communist Party of Germany, the Spartacist Uprising, the Freikorp, and the White Emigres. All four of these examples all tie in and build up how divided the country was. Now remember, all of this is based off of the fact that the country was divided because they just lost the war. They are in a new country where their king was overthrown, or actually he left, and we're trying to figure things out. So everyone had their own ideas, and at its core, the one thing that everyone shared in Germany was that they were broken because of national and everything we talked about with World War I. So these four examples are going to highlight some specific information that leads to significant social divisions. The key here being the Spartacist Uprising and the White Emigres. But in order to understand the uprising, you got to know about the KPD and the Freikorp. So, who are the KPD? Well, they are the Communist Party of Germany. The German translation is right over here. The Kommunistische Partei Deutschland, or the Communist Party of Germany. These guys were people who were inspired by the Russian Revolution during World War I to bring communism into Germany. They wanted to jump off from the Russian Revolution and have a revolution in Germany. They wanted to rise up against the religious party, the bureaucrats, the Nazi Party, and money owners who were all hiding behind other political parties to overthrow them. Right? A lot of their propaganda was focused just as you see here. These guys right here, all of these men behind this political party, the SPD, are really just trying to make sure that you stay below and subjugated because it's going to make them more money. Hence why, you have in the next picture a communist, which is always the color red, stamping out or fighting against these guys. Now, the Communist Party had a very strong group in Germany because they were constantly out in the streets. They were constantly engaged. They were pushing for revolutions and led many little uprisings that ultimately kept failing one after the other. Because of that, the German government, or the Weimar government, as we come to know it, had to figure out and outsource ways to protect the country from these uprisings, because the police were doing the best that they can, and the military was non-existent, as we saw with the Treaty of Versailles, that you can only have 100,000 of them. That's spread pretty thin when you think of the entire country. So what the country did, what the Weimar government did, was they reached out to veterans, and they reached out to a specific group within Germany called the Freikorp, also known as the Freikorps, also the Free Regiment. These people were all veterans of World War I, straight from the front, suffering from PTSD, suffering from traumatic issues, and the only way they can resolve these issues, the only way they could manage them, was going into politics or being freelance mercenaries. And so they came together to create the Freikorp, as you see here. You know, they got all their old military regalia, they got all their old military uniforms, and in some cases weapons, and took to the streets to defend the country. Now, a lot of the Freikorp were right-wing politics. So in communism, they're on the left side, Freikorp was on the right side. They were on polar opposites of each other. And so they were always clashing. Whenever there was a communist uprising that ultimately failed, it was because of the Freikorp. It was because of these soldiers, as you can see here, using military machines, using war machines to face uprisings, to take down citizens, to really fight to preserve their country. And if you notice, if you look very carefully at this photo, this uniform that they're wearing is going to be, or still is, the uniform of Germany. These people were former veterans. I cannot stress that enough. But they were veterans who were so focused on preserving their country by any means. Hence, as you can see here with the skull and crossbones. As you can see with the fact that between these two gentlemen right here, they have 5 different grenades on their belt to stop people from doing an uprising. This is nearly a lawless time. But the biggest uprising between these two started one of the largest divisions within Germany, called the Spartacist Uprising, or in German, Spartakischer Aufstand. Now, the Spartacist Uprising was a coup d'état, or in French, as it is there, a overthrowing of the government. The KPD, the communists, amassed as many people as they could and took to the streets in an attempt to overthrow the government. And in a desperate attempt, in a very lost attempt, the government reached out to the Freikorp, and said, "We need your help. We need as many of your troops as we can possibly get." All of this taking place in January 1919. So to put this into scope for you, this uprising takes place 6 literal months with the new government. So the new government, the Weimar government, comes in on November 1918. These guys have their uprising in January 1919. In the first 6 months, there's an uprising. And this uprising at the start of their government is going to leave a permanent division in the country. It's going to completely divide and cut the country. Because, as you can see in this picture here, the Freikorp were ruthless, merciless. This is actually a picture of right before of an execution of a communist KPD in the streets of Germany during the uprising. And right over here is the Freikorp. The Spartacist Uprising cut deep in the already wounded Germany and showed that if you do anything, if you try to fight, if you try to lead anything too severe, we're going to get you down. We're going to cut you. And on the other side, if you were any member of the left side of the community, if you believed in communism or you believed in democracy or you believed in things like that, you were already cast in a shadow because of this, things like that, because of the Spartacist Uprising. And so from here all the way until we start getting the Nazis really rising to power, there's a lot of issues where, you know, they were already antagonistic. Now, on top of this little horrible start to the new country, there was also a bunch of new people entering into Germany called the White Emigres. Now, the White Emigres were Russians who fled the Soviet Union to go into Europe to get away from communism. They were rich refugees who could flee the country during the revolution because they didn't want to be in the revolution. And as you can see on this map here, between 1917 and 1923, they came all across the world, with 100,000 in Germany, 100,000 in Poland, so on and so forth. Now, the thing about the White Emigres is they were severely anti-communist. They hated the communists as much as possible. And they tried to persuade all of these countries here about how dangerous communism was. And underpinned with that, a lot of these people came with what is known as a very huge propaganda called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And what this is a document that explain how two Jewish rabbis met in secret in the dark to share and discuss their plans for world domination. And how they're going to overtake every country and eventually everything's going to fall into this Jewish plot. The problem with this is the fact that it's a fake. The Russian government made it to try to underpin the communist movement. So as these Russian refugees are fleeing the country, they're bringing with them a direct racial connection by saying, hey, the Jews are going to take over the world because they're bringing communists with them. And the problem was, some people knew it was a fake and some people didn't. And because they didn't, they felt like, this is fact, this is reality, we need to fight. So not only in Germany are they seeing and witnessing the revolutions in the streets, but then they're also reading documents that are saying, oh, the communists are led by the Jewish people who are trying to take over our country. And so now we see divisions being split between those who believe on the right side, the Republican side or the more conservative side. You have the Democrat side and the communist side, and then you have racism. Now, the problem with the Protocols of Israel is this isn't the establishment of anti-Semitism in Europe. Anti-Semitism in Europe has existed since 500 BCE. But the problem is, as this forgery entered into Europe, it resulted in a lot of Jewish individuals, around 75,000 Jewish individuals being killed in pogroms across the country. Not only in Germany, but all across Europe. Now, the thing that makes the Protocols of the Elders of Zion very important for this is the fact that when this was happening, when these refugees came to Germany, when all the Spartacist Uprising and everything was happening with them, a very famous World War I general called General Ludendorff came up and said, hey, the reason why we failed, the reason why our country lost was because of the Jews, was because of the communists, was because of this. And the Protocols of Israel, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, tell you this is why they failed. This is why we lost. This is why you're suffering. This is why you have economic problems. This is why the communists are trying to take over. And so the White Emigres really brought with them such a new massive wave of anti-Semitism, which resulted in a massive social division that Hitler and his Communist Party, his Nazi Party will tap into, as you will see in future lectures.